Hey guys, before we get started, I wanted you to click on the link below to get a free copy of the Nevada Edge Guide. This guide is packed full of information about the benefits of Nevada LLCs and the tax strategies, all about using Nevada entities. Full of information that'll benefit you and your personal life. Just click the link below. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wealthy and Wise. I'm your host, Court Christie, and today we're going to be talking about the history of LLCs, limited liability companies. When you're thinking about starting a business, you need to choose the type of entity or business structure that you're going to set up for your new business. And there's various choices when it comes to that. But the LLC is the most common type of business structure that's out there. Over 80% of businesses are registered as an LLC. But where did they come from? How did they get into existence? Well, I brought you an expert today. I have Brian Hawley that's going to be talking to us today with all of his experience. He's been coaching business startups for over 15 years. He's a business specialist at NCH, and he's going to share with us the history of LLCs. Brian, welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for your time and sharing your knowledge with all of our viewers today. So, where did LLCs come from?
Well, out of the blue, kind of. Well, the actual answer would be Germany and France.
Okay.
They had an entity, and they still do, but 50 years ago, some of the states started looking at some other entities in some other countries where you had the easeability of running your business like a partnership, but unlike a limited partnership, for instance, where only the limited partner has limited liability and the general partner, of which you need at least one on each side. The general partner was generally sued if the thing got sued. His assets, his personal assets were not protected. The limited partners were protected, and what was exposed is only what he invested into the entity itself, into the partnership. So, but with a limited liability company, it's like there's no general partners. It's everybody's a limited partner, one could say. But it's a limited liability company where you have members as owners instead of stockholders for a corporation. So really the answer is other places, because that's what we do in America. We make things better.
So came from Europe, right?
And just like corporations did.
Brought in over here.
Yeah.
All right.
And about 50 years ago is when this happened. So the fun thing is where Congress said, okay, states, you guys can have these things, but we're not going to vote on nor make nor make the IRS interpret that vote and write new tax code. And the IRS was like, oh, thank Christ. Mm-hmm. So that's where a lot of people say check the box solution, right? Where you get to choose existing tax code. And it's really, really interesting because in certain situations where you want the asset protection, you want that corporate veil from the daddy corporation, because an LLC is essentially a hybrid between a corporation and a partnership. So from daddy corporation, you get that corporate veil, you get that indemnification of all members and managers, unless you're up to something illegal like Bernie Madoff, right? But that's what I always use. But and when you get that, you maybe want to install that veil, but you don't want to change the tax situation. For instance, like passive income, right? Rentals, it's pretty hot. So rental income, you want that on your schedule, attached to your 1040, Schedule E specifically. But the reason for that is the best place for income is where you'll be taxed the least.
Of course.
And where you're going to be taxed the least for rental income is on your Schedule E attached to your 1040, right? So our job as like a structuralist would be to insert asset protection without messing up a good tax situation, which would be through the personal. My CPA says an LLC or a corporate structure is going to mess up my taxes. Not if you use a disregarded for tax purposes LLC, which is the first way I'd like to talk about like how LLCs could be taxed and such, right? Because where they've come from is, 50 years ago they came up, but in the birthing of them into the United States, and Congress not wanting to write new tax code, it left a lot of versatility. That's why, like, what's the number of new entities? 80%?
It's over 80% right now that are registering as LLCs. So,
right.
This is like, it has been adopted really strongly.
Right.
It's kind of the default now.
Yeah, when I started 15 years ago, in fact, at this very company in 2006, I would furnish a corporation to a new client about an LLC, about 2 or 3 a week. Everything else is corporations. Now it's like 2 or 3 a month of corporate. It's completely flipped and even more so. So the corporations still have their place, but again, most small businesses need/want the versatility of an LLC. And so it could be disregarded for tax purposes if one owner just completely ignored. And I think in cartoons, so you'll have to excuse me, but imagine the LLC standing between you and the judge saying, you can't sue them, they just work here, the owners, right? Mm-hmm. It gets between them and the tax man, local state fed, says, oh, well, yeah, everything's going through my books, right? I'm responsible for all the payments coming in and out for legal reasons because you have to use that LLC so it could protect you. But as far as the taxes go, the owners are like holding up a window pane of glass. The tax man sees right through it, sees the owner's smiling face, and whatever it is that they're doing ends up on the proper schedule. And a lot of times that's what you want. But here's where it gets fun, is you could also have an LLC taxed corporately, like from Daddy Corporation. It could be the common S Corp, small business corporation, filling out a simple form after the entity's born. That rhymed. Or even tax like a C Corp. Right? So if you want all of those things.
Now this gets confusing.
Yes.
So, our viewers are listening, they're thinking LLC, okay? I've heard I need an LLC, I'm gonna form an LLC, I'm gonna start this new business, or I'm a real estate investor, I'm gonna use it for the purchase of my, next property, whatever that property might be. But now you're bringing in corporate tax law and code.
Right.
What does that have to do with an LLC?
Yeah.
And so this is where it gets, people come to us and say, I don't understand. I have a corporate tax rate, but I have a limited liability company because I didn't choose a corporation. Mm-hmm. That's so hard to wrap your head around.
Exactly. And dealing with our new clients, because as a business specialist here at NCH, I get the opportunity to take the new client, because when our talented staff is bringing on a new client, introducing them to the company, telling them what we're about, telling them what we could do for them, and then ultimately when they choose us to help them with their business formation and their new baby, right, their business, then I get to take over as one of the coaching type business specialists and help stay with them for at least a year, make sure the concrete dries properly, right? Mm-hmm. So all the time I do hear, I'm like, okay, so I see that your LLC is taxed like an S Corp, if that's the case. And it's like, oh, no, it's an LLC. And then much of what I just shared with you and our audience today, I get to go into all of that fun stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, because it doesn't have its own tax classification, which is good because you get this versatility. So for those that are doing active income, right, because we talked about passive investments using real estate, right, like rentals as an example. But for something active, like if you're manufacturing something, providing a service, selling something, that's all active, even punching the clock at work, which you can't use a business entity for, but all of that's active. Anytime you're actively seeking income, those things are subject to nasty things like self-employment tax, right? Like 15.3, boom, right off. You can't do anything about it either. So having a corporately taxed structure, the right one, and you got S and C, and we'll get into that in a second. S Corp, C Corp, right? So can help mitigate, a lot of times in half, if not better, of that self-employment tax simply by owning a company that employs you, right? So instead of saying, I'll have a corporation, you could say I'll have an LLC, a limited liability company, but I choose to have a tax like an S Corp because that's good for me right now. And that could change. You could escalate into a C, you could downgrade into a sole proprietorship if you change the mode of what you're doing. There's just too much versatility for us to go into, but the good news is that, especially here at NCH, that you get to talk to somebody about what it is that you're doing, right? And you get to find out those answers because, though you found us on the internet, right? And when people watching this, our audience, there's a lot of stuff out there and you're not going to find you. Where you're going to find you is in a conversation with either our talented staff that bring the clients to me so that I can help them further, or through me once you are a client. And that's where the really fun stuff is being able to go through that and figure out what's best for you.
Yeah, and I think, for the viewers that are listening to this, there's confusion around the different taxations of an LLC, and that you have to choose how they're going to be taxed also, which often isn't talked about. And then you say the best way to identify the right type of taxation for you is to talk to somebody that specializes in it, has been doing it for 15 years, Brian, like yourself. and the listeners here are going, oh, he's going to try to sell me something. I don't want to get on a phone call because I'm going to get trapped into, feeling obligated, or that I'm going to spend some money. And, that's not how you approach clients. And anyone that's looking to, set up an LLC, it's a conversation that they're looking for, that they need, not just looking for. If they're thinking about starting a business, the next step is, okay, choose the taxation of that business. But it's best to know that going in, but it can always be changed later on.
Right.
But I know from people that have worked with you directly, is they get a ton of knowledge, they get a lot of free expertise, and they don't have to do anything or move forward. Always, of course, the hope that we're in business, that they will choose to want to work with you, but there's no obligations to do anything, and you're willing to give up your time to talk to people so that they will come in and understand how this works. So
absolutely, and also remember, by the time a client gets to me, they're no longer really thinking about whether or not they want to do business with us. They've chosen us. And one of the strengths that I think that we really have out there, as far as within our market, and us being a 50-state model, right? Not just focusing on Nevada or Wyoming or Delaware. If you're a heart surgeon, that a veil isn't going to do well for you. It's where do you live, right? Let's get you an LLC right there, right? So is that there's a certain amount of anxiety in doing anything new because, human, right? So when we have somebody find us, whether it's through their friends or family or some advertising or whatnot, or even this video, and they decide to become a client, it's during that process, that decision-making process, where they are informed that they don't have to think of every single little question and permutation and, be standing in the middle of little nail bits, biting their nails and everything and being tense because, once you get the business structure set up, there's versatility for what it is that they're doing. And that's really what we want. We want our clients at ease so that by the time they get to me, like you said, it is a conversation. It's what are you doing? How are you doing it? I see some notes here, but I want to hear it from you. And I see here that you're doing like active style income, and tell me about that. Or who would I have to be a client of yours? You'd have to be looking for this and that kind of market with this kind of need, and which allows me to live vicariously through a lot of different types of businesses because you don't do this and not love business.
Right? You get to see it all.
Yeah,
and it's like
great.
an adventure. You get to experience all the wonderful businesses that are starting in the country, and then you also get to help support, their vision and their launch and get them going. And there's a lot of satisfaction in you help them get going. And they're off. Which is a wonderful thing. You touched on something I think that's so important too. Is as you're thinking about getting a business launched and which structure is the right structure first of all, and then it's like which type of taxation that you're going to be taxed under, and then it's like, okay, wow, there's so much information, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's just Googling it and getting the information, and then people just kind of start to shut down, and then they don't do anything. But I think the nice thing of knowing is there's people like you that are available to them at no charge that they can literally sit down and have a conversation with. And then there's an organization that has a legal team that's there to support their business. Then you have a tax team that's there to help them with that, identifying what type of taxation they want to be under or what code section they want to be under for their business. And then you've got these support services beyond that to help you stay compliant and set yourself up in another state, and services to grow your business, services to brand your business. And so there's we always talk about what it takes to come into our organization, but there's so much more that you get access to. And I think that's where people don't really realize is you kind of have this full support team that you choose when you want to engage that support team. And it's really based on your needs. And when you're ready and you want to have a phone call with us for something else that you need, we're here for you. But people like you that are there to simplify it for them, because it gets so confusing. When anybody has 15 years experience in any space, you're an expert.
Yeah,
you know,
you got your
you're an
10,000 hours
expert
in at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so now that you've got that expertise, it's like now sharing it with people that are researching.
Yeah.
It's like you get to just simplify it in about 5 minutes of
Yeah,
intake.
exactly.
Here's what you need, and they
Yeah.
just have to know that they can trust you and trust the organization.
Exactly, and that's where it comes in with like where I'm blessed to work for a company that you and Derek started 33 years ago, going on 33 years.
Yes.
And first just starting out with corporations, and then of course LLCs, and then after hearing enough from clients like, hey, do you guys do taxes? I really like what you did with me for my business structure. You probably looked at each other and said, are we going to start answering yes to this question at some point? So, because if our clients trust us to even ask about the other services, and then 33 years of going, you know what, our clients really want us to do this. Can we operate in that space in a competitive way and do it at a level of expertise that our clients expect from whatever we did for them in the past, which is why they're asking. And that's why I really like working for NCH and working with our clients, because there is that trust there, right? I always say that the proof's in the pudding. Mm-hmm. Grab a spoon.
Absolutely.
So
and experts, like you, Brian, that can help them make a decision. You provide a tremendous amount of peace of mind to someone who's got a great idea, mm-hmm. but now realizes that that's just one part of a business.
Right.
The idea. Then there's the next thing, and then the layering, and can I expand and grow? But then we got to get that business organized, licensed, registered, everything else ready, so they can build the framework around it. And that's what we want people to know is you're an expert at NCH. NCH has the resources as an organization to support them for years. People say, well, how long will NCH be around? And it's been around for 33 years already.
Let's hope for another 33.
It's like laws change,
mm-hmm.
we adapt. Yeah. Tax code changes, we adapt. Services for business, we adapt. I mean, there was no internet when we started.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like
whole
we had
modes of business.
Hand deliver business registration forms to the state. And so we'll be around, I think we'll be around for another 33 years mm-hmm. for sure. So
exactly.
Well, I do want to thank you for sort of helping demystify a little bit of history about where LLCs came into the United mm-hmm. States, coming from Europe, and just, helping break it down for people that don't understand how are these things taxed, mm-hmm. what's the right type of entity that I use, but then it gets like muddy from there on, what's next? And, I'd love to have you back to kind of unpackage this a little bit more. That'd be great if you're willing to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Wonderful, and I know that our viewers here today will enjoy hearing you again, kind of get into more of the weeds of, how this taxation works and maybe who should choose which type of taxation, what type of businesses, or maybe what maturity of business is based on the taxation too. So thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And for all of you tuning in today, thank you for watching. This has been another edition of Wealthy and Wise. I'm your host, Court Christie, and I appreciate everybody spending the time. Please like and subscribe to our channel. I really appreciate that. It gets us out there and spreads the word, and make it a great day.